Hello everyone and welcome back to the Green Developer channel. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to film a whole development vlog this week, but I still wanted to post a video today. There seemed to be quite a bit of interest in the video that I posted last week, so this week I thought I'd talk about something that's a little bit in the same vein. And I want to ask the question, do you need a degree to become a professional software developer? Nope, you don't. So, that was easy enough. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next week. Okay, but seriously, it's true that you don't need a degree to become a software developer. It's different from being a doctor or a lawyer. There's no legal term or title associated with it. So as long as you can prove to an employer that you have the required knowledge to do the job, there's no reason why you couldn't become a professional software developer without having a degree to back it up. So then it'd be kind of easy to jump to the conclusion that, degrees are worthless and you shouldn't bother with them if you can get to the same kind of end goal without having to go through the whole process. But that's obviously a really loaded question, so I'm going to try my best to clarify some of the good and the bad things that will come from doing a software development related degree like computer science or software engineering. This is in no way intended to try to convince you to do or not to do a degree if your end goal is to become a software developer. Is just to give you kind of my own perspective and give you more ideas to think about when it comes time to take your own decision. You're all in much better positions to decide for yourself, so this is just there to kind of help you a little bit. Okay, so let's jump right into it. These topics are in no particular order, so I'll try to add as many timestamps in the video description down below if you want to skip ahead and come back however you like. I'd also like to remind you, if you like the video, make sure to hit like, it helps me a ton, and if you want to see more content like this, hit subscribe. Okay, so let's talk about the first topic, the elephant in the room, if you will, money. Depending on where you are in the world and what your situation is, money is a really big factor when deciding to do or not to do a degree. Unfortunately, that's about as much input as I can give about this. It's gonna depend on your personal situation. I just want to get it out of the way. Nobody else than you can know your own personal details and your own personal situation and can help you decide if it's worth from a monetary standpoint to do or not to do a degree. You might be somewhere where it's super expensive and it's not worth it because of your own situation. You might be somewhere where it's super cheap and it's not worth it because even though it's cheap, it's not something you have money or are willing to pay for. So unfortunately, I can't say much more than that, but I'm sure you know in your situation if it's actually worth it for you. I just wanted to get it out of the way because I know everybody's going to be asking about it. And the truth is, I can't help you. You know your own situation better for that specific case. So in my introduction, I talked about the fact that there's not really anything you can't do in the software engineering / development field without having a degree. It's true to an extent. There is one particular aspect of it that I'm fairly sure you can't get into if you don't actually go through a college degree in the first place, and that's going through an academic, career path. If what you want to do is either do research or work at a university as a professor or something like that, there's no really getting around it. You'll just have to go through getting a college degree in the first place and a master's and etc. The big thing about this is that learning to do research is a thing of its own, and so as much as it's possible to learn the content and the ideas behind software engineering and software development on your own, it's the research part that's going to be really difficult to kind of get a grasp of and accomplish if you're not, having guidance from other professors and people like that can, kind of help you learn and understand how to do research. But if I'm being totally honest, this is probably a very, very small subset of people that are actually interested in software engineering. So I'm going to leave it at that. If that's what you want to do, I think you know who you are and you already know that you need a degree to, go on with that career path. Third thing, the big thing that comes with going to college and having a university degree and, enrolling in classes is that most of the time it'll give you access to equipment, depending on the field you're working on or the field you're studying in. That equipment might be more or less depending on what you're doing. Luckily for us, most fields that are related to software development and engineering aren't necessarily really bound to any physical, tools that are not available to most people in the first place. And for the most part, as you're just learning, just working off of a laptop is going to be more than enough to learn basically everything you need. One of the big things that I can see is that through a university, if you're doing something like, bigger machine learning and AI work, you might be able to access some more powerful machines remotely, which might help you with that kind of stuff. But I feel like in most cases, people that work through things like that are going to be people that are more involved in research, and so should be doing a college degree anyway. And if you kind of want to have access to more powerful machines like that, there's also things that you can basically pay for outside of a school system that's going to be cheaper than getting a degree if all you want is to just have access to more powerful machines to run your machine learning algorithms and things like that. So all in all, when it comes to access to equipment and physical stuff, there's not much that a software engineering or computer science degree brings to the table for that specific matter. We're lucky enough to be in a field that's evolving very rapidly, and with people that kind of keep up to date and try to share that knowledge and information very, very rapidly as things are transforming. That means that there's always a lot of resources for new things that are coming out, new things to learn, and that are made really easily available online for free or for small costs. There isn't much barrier to that information that makes it really unavailable if you're not actually doing a college degree in the first place. So at this point, I feel like I kind of painted a really bad picture of why you would want to do a college degree in the first place, but that's obviously not the whole thing. One of the big things that a really big component of a positive aspect of going through a college degree is the community learning aspect of it all. More specifically, having to work through problems that you're given in school as groups and, in a method that's kind of similar to what you'd find when you're out in the industry and working as a professional. If you don't have much experience with software development and you're kind of basing your whole idea of how it looks based on movies and things like that, you probably think that developers spend their whole day, writing code at their computer and don't speak to anyone and are super antisocial and whatever other stigma there is related to software development. Sorry to break it to you if you're completely antisocial and you want to become a software developer, but it's the complete opposite. As a software engineer and developer, you'll have to fix issues and find, solutions to problems that are kind of not really clear to anyone and difficult to conceptualize. And so what will happen most of the time is that people will have to get together and kind of brainstorm ways to fix and achieve results that they want together. There's a lot more group and community type of work that's done in a professional settings than you might imagine. Sitting at your computer and programming and just, filling in lines of code for it to do the right thing is kind of the easy part of the job. The hardest part of the job is to come up to those, solutions and find what will work for what you're trying to do. And like I said, most of those decisions, most of the time, are kind of done in groups with, people being able to give their input and trying to find the best solution that will work for everyone. And when you go through your college degree, hopefully, if it's anything like mine, all those projects are going to be group projects, or at least a part of them will be, so that you can kind of, start practicing already that idea of trying to find solutions as a group rather than just as an individual. Which is something that if you're just, going through content online or following a course by yourself, is something that you might not have such an opportunity to practice while you're learning all the skills you need to become a software developer. Chances are, as you're doing a college degree, you're not going to have like a specific class that talks about that necessarily, but it's just something that's going to kind of transpire through all the classes that you take, and that will in the end kind of hopefully prepare you well enough so that you're a good team member and a good teammate when it comes time to, do those engineering meetings and try to come up with solutions. Plus, that whole community learning thing obviously, translate after getting your degree, and the fact that you're going to have built a network of people that are good at solving problems, understand software engineering, and, people that you can actually go to outside of your work that might be working at a different company to get their opinion, or that can, help you if you're working on a personal project or starting a business. And you really can't understate, the effect that having a, network of people that are in the same boat as you can have on, you know, your career and whatever else you're going to be doing moving forward. Kind of in the same style, related to how you learn and how things are applied when you're working on learning something on your own versus in college. Depending on your learning style and how motivated you can force yourself to be will be a big factor in if a college degree is worth it or not for you. I personally love development. I have an affinity for it. I have had an affinity for it ever since I started, you know, learning it. And so I kind of knew that it's the thing that I would want to be doing, but I'm not going to kid myself and say that I would have had the kind of motivation to get through it without the pressure of doing it through a degree. There's no shame, I think, in saying that at all. People have different motivation levels and, you know, don't necessarily work the same way when it comes to learning stuff on their own. And you just kind of have to be honest with yourself and say, if I want to learn this thing on my own, am I going to have the discipline to actually go through it and learn the really big amount of stuff that I need to learn to get to where I want to be? Like I said, I know I could have, you know, kept on studying and learn enough to kind of get by with programming, but I really don't think I would have been able to go through as much stuff as I did through my college education to kind of be able to get a job and everything, just because I know myself. I know I wouldn't have had that motivation to get through all of it. And so if you're the kind of person that can just, you know, push through all that stuff and keep yourself motivated for months on end to kind of get through everything you need to learn to become a developer, then good for you. Maybe you don't need that part that's kind of given with the college education. But if you know yourself kind of as someone that has a little bit more motivation problems, really think about that aspect before deciding that you don't want to go to college to become a developer, if that's where you really want to be ending up. Kind of continuing on that subject, if it might be difficult for some people to kind of motivate themselves to learn everything they need to learn to become developers, that kind of reflects in how employers might see you as somebody applying for a job if you don't have a degree. Let me try to explain myself. It's really hard for somebody to motivate themselves to learn everything they need to learn to become a developer if they don't have a structure around them that kind of pushes them to learn everything they need to learn. They're going to have to work extra hard to prove these employers that they have put in the work and they know the stuff that they need to know to become developers. It doesn't mean that you actually learned everything you had to learn if you actually did a degree, but it's obviously kind of a shortcut in the mind of employers to think if he got through there, there's a big likelihood that he just had to put in enough time to at least know the basics of everything. And so if you decide not to go the degree path, make sure that you're aware of the fact that you are going to have to prove yourself and, you know, kind of show that you've done all that work and you actually know your stuff when it comes time to applying to jobs and interviewing for them. That's why a lot of people, when giving advice to people that might want to become developers without having a degree, tell them that they really should be working on having a thorough portfolio of what they learned with projects that kind of showcase what they have been doing and what they're capable of doing. Just be ready to have something in your hands to show that you know your stuff. And here's my last little bit of input. Going through a degree takes a lot of time. 3 for a computer science, maybe 4 for software engineering, depending on where you are. And there's even like co-op programs here in Canada, at least, that last up to 5 years. Through that whole process, you're obviously not, you know, working and learning a specific subject all the time. There might be some specialization through your degree, but a lot of it will be a broad understanding of a lot of surface level stuff when it comes to software development and engineering. And that's not a bad thing at all when you couple it with the fact that you have a degree to show for at the end. When you apply as a junior after having a degree, employers will probably not expect you to have very specific understanding of anything. They might just, you know, expect you to have good fundamental understandings of what you need to do and the tools you have at your disposal as a developer and software engineer. That means that it's really easy to kind of jump back and forth in the start of your career between different fields because, you know, employers aren't going to expect you to know anything in details. You can kind of more easily work your way through finding all the way throughout your college degree and at the beginning of your career what you're most interested in and what you prefer working on, whether it's, game development or web development or front-end work or whatever it might be. Because of what I just talked about and the fact that you kind of have to prove yourself a little bit more when you don't have a degree because you don't have something to kind of attest for all the work that you've put in, I feel like you're a little bit more restricted in how you can learn topics about software development. You're kind of forced into, specializing into something from the get-go because that's what's going to bring in the most results that you can show for and kind of prove yourself to an employer with. That means that if after like 5 months of really like focusing on something, you kind of have a change of mind and want to switch to something else, it might be more difficult to do so because, you're kind of starting with a little bit less of a base knowledge on other subjects, and it might be a little bit more difficult because of that to convince employers if you want to, change fields or things like that. That's not to say it's impossible, and especially if you manage to get like a first job as a developer in a certain field and want to kind of change field to something that's not super related but not too far off, just having the professional experience might be enough by that point. But as you're starting, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do changes like that just because you don't have that, broader picture of other fields and specializations within software development and engineering. But to be fair, in the end, even if you switch once or twice, it might end up being, less time invested than doing a degree anyway. So it really just depends on what you think is worth for that particular aspect of it. I personally really like the idea of having a broader understanding of other subjects, just because, for one, I know there's a lot of subjects that I would have never touched if it wasn't for the fact that I had a nice, easy to understand introduction made very professionally, and I didn't have to kind of dig through the subject to kind of understand the basics. I'm probably never going to work on a compiler, but if it hadn't been from, a class on compilers I took, I know for a fact I would have never tried to understand the basics. Is it going to be useful in the future for myself? Maybe, maybe not, but at least I know I have the kind of base I need if it ever comes up. And it might come up more than you think, not necessarily at a level that you need to actually work on some of the stuff that you're not specialized in, but as I said, working as a software developer and engineer is a very team-oriented type of work, and you're very likely to have to at least discuss and brainstorm and work with other fields on big projects, and just having that base of knowledge and being able to kind of understand at least some of the ideas that are being brought by the other teams and parties is going to be a tremendous help in like figuring stuff out as a team and getting the best solutions possible. So that was my 2 cents on some of the ideas that, are behind the question of, is a computer science or software engineering degree worth it to become a developer? If you were expecting to have a clear-cut answer on if it is or if it isn't, like most thing in software development, there's no clear-cut answer at all because there's plenty of ways to do everything, and so you just kind of have to weigh the good and bad sides and see what kind of works for you and what you prefer doing with your own time. Like I tried to mention earlier, there's no good or bad way to go about it. It really just depends on your personal situation and what you prefer, what you think you'd get out of a degree, and if you'd rather skip some steps because you want to focus on something specific. It all depends on your situation, but I hope just having that discussion kind of helps you get some of the ideas of why it's worth in some cases and why it might not be worth it in some other cases. Just opening up that idea to work through it for yourself is really the idea behind this video. So anyway, I hope it helped you, especially if you were on the fence about it and got you thinking about the whole thing. Either way, that's going to be it for me. I hope you liked the video. Make sure to hit the like button if you did, and hit subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. I try to post every week on Friday or Saturday if I kind of run out of time editing the video. Anyway, I'll see you next week. Until then, take care.